Part 21 of Wonder, Via's Secret. A couple of days after spring break ended, Mum found out that Via hadn't told her about the school play that was happening at her high school the next week. And Mum was mad. Mum doesn't really get mad that much, though Dad would disagree with that. But she really was mad at Via for that. She and Via got into a really big fight. I could hear them yelling at each other in Via's room. My bionic Lobot ears, remember the Lobot ears, could hear Mum saying, "But what is it with you lately, Via? You're moody and secretive. What's so wrong with not telling you about a stupid play?" Via practically screamed. "I don't even have a speaking part." "Your boyfriend does though. Don't you want us to see him?" "No, actually I don't," said Via. "Stop screaming. You screamed first. Just leave me alone, okay? You've been really good about leaving me alone my whole life. So why choose high school to suddenly be interested?" Then I don't know what Mum answered because it all got very quiet and even my bionic Lobot ears couldn't pick up a signal. Turn and tell your neighbour why Via really didn't want to tell her family about her being in her high school play. Did everyone remember that it was because she didn't want Augie to go to the play because she doesn't want people to know about Augie at her school, her new school? My cave. By dinner they seemed to have made up. Dad was working late. Daisy was sleeping. Who's Daisy? Turn and tell your neighbour. She'd thrown up a lot earlier in the day and Mum made an appointment to take her to the vet the next morning. The three of us were sitting down and no one was talking. Finally I said, "So are we going to go and see you, Justin, in the play?" Via didn't answer but looked down at her plate. "You know, Augie," said Mum, "I hadn't quite realised what play it was, and it really isn't something that would be interesting to kids your age." Ha! So, if mums now, listen again, especially if you've zoned out, rub your ears and listen. "You know, Augie," Mum said quietly, "I hadn't realised what play it was, and I don't think it's one that's interesting to kids your age." If you haven't got up to speed, basically, Via's obviously told Mum the truth as to why she didn't want to tell the family about the play because she didn't want Augie to go. And now Mum understands and she is telling Augie it's not really appropriate for him to go. "So I'm not invited?" And I looked at Via. "Didn't say that," said Mum. "I just don't think it's something you'd enjoy." Or Mum supporting Via. "You'd get totally bored," Via said, like she was accusing me of something. "Are you and Dad going?" I said. "What?" "Oh, Dad'll go and I'll stay home," said Mum. "What?" said Via. "Oh, great. So you're going to punish me for being honest by not coming to the play?" "You didn't want us to go in the first place," said Mum. "But now you know about it, of course. I want you to go." "What are you two talking about?" I shouted. "Nothing," they both snapped at me. "Just something about Via's school that has nothing to do with you." "You're lying," I said to Mum. Oh, this is turning into a really nasty argument. Not a conversation, but an argument. "Excuse me," said Mum, kind of shocked. Even Via looked surprised. "I said you're lying. You're lying." "Whoa," I screamed at Via, getting up. "You're both liars. You're both lying to my face. I'm not an idiot." "Sit down, Augie," said Mum, grabbing my arm. I pulled my arm away and pointed at Via. "You think I don't know what's going on. You just don't want your brand new fancy high school friends to know about your brother's face." "Augie," Mum yelled, "that's not true. Stop lying to me, Mum. Stop treating me like a baby. I'm not a baby. I know what's going on." I ran down the hallway to my room and slammed the door behind me so hard that I actually heard little pieces of the wall crumble inside the doorframe. Then I plopped onto my bed and I pulled the covers on top of me. I threw my pillows over my disgusting face and I piled all my stuffed animals on top of the pillows like I was inside a little cave. If I could walk around with a pillow over my face all the time, I would. I don't even know how I got so mad. I wasn't really mad at the beginning of dinner. I wasn't even sad. But then all of a sudden, it all kind of just exploded out of me. It's happened to everyone, right? Have you had a feeling explode out of you? I knew Via didn't want me to go to the stupid play, and I knew why. I figured Mum would follow me into my room right away, but she didn't. I wanted her to find me inside the cave of stuffed animals, so I waited even more. But even after 10 minutes, she still didn't come in after me. I was pretty surprised. She always checked on me when I was in my room and upstairs about stuff. I pictured Mum and Via talking about me in the kitchen. I figured Via was feeling really, really bad. I pictured Mum totally laying on the guilt to Via, and Dad had been mad at her when he came home too. I made a little hole through a pile of pillows and stuffed animals and peeked at the clock on the wall. Half an hour passed and Mum still hadn't come to my room. I tried to listen for the sounds of in the other rooms. Were they still having dinner? What was going on? Finally, the door opened and it was Via. She didn't even bother coming over to my bed, and she didn't come in softly like I thought she would. She came in quickly. Okay, now we have a few options here as to what might happen next. Perhaps you could turn and tell your neighbour, what do you think is happening? Has Mum growled at Via? Has Mum supported Via? Are they worried about Augie, or are they deciding to give Augie some tough love and learn to behave and understand that now Via also needs time and attention? I don't know. There's lots of different options and you might have a totally different one than me. Turn and talk to your neighbour about it. When you turn and talk to your neighbour, if you don't have a response, you haven't thought, or you zoned out and missed the question, or you zoned out and missed the story, you should tell your neighbour that. So, I don't know, but I'm interested in what you have to say. That's what book clubs do. Or it can be, can you repeat the question because I wasn't listening properly? Because we don't listen 100% of the day. We all zone out at some stage. So can you repeat the question to your friend? Or you could say, I have an idea, but I'm also interested in hearing yours. So I'm going to talk and then you're going to talk. When somebody shares an idea in book club, it's a good idea to say to them, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Or that's an interesting idea. I can build on that. Or I have a different perspective. So part of us reading Wonder at the moment is also learning how to turn and have conversations in book club time. Augie, said Via, come quick, Mum needs you. I'm not apologising. Augie, this isn't about you. Not everything's about you in the world. Augie, now hurry up. Daisy is sick. Mum's taking her to the emergency vet. Come and say goodbye. I pushed the pillows off my face and I looked up at her. That's why I saw she was crying. What do you mean? Goodbye. Come on, she said, holding out her hand. I took her hand and followed her down the hall to the kitchen. I'm going to stop for a minute. See, the author says holding out her hand to take Augie's hand shows that she's over the argument now and she's willing to, walk with him. Little things when an author writes, their author's craft. She didn't just say, come on, she held out her hand. Kind of a peace offering. We're not arguing now. I need to take your hand. Come on, she said, holding out her hand. I took her hand and followed her down the hall to the kitchen. Daisy was lying down sideways on the floor with her legs straight out in front of her. She was panting a lot, like she'd been running in a park. Mum was kneeling beside her, stroking the top of her head. What happened? I don't know, she just started whimpering suddenly. I looked down at Mum, who was crying. I'm taking her to the animal hospital downtown. The taxi's coming to pick me up. That vet will make her better, right? Mum looked at me. I hope so, honey, but honestly, I don't know. Of course he will. Daisy's been sick a lot lately, Augie, and she's old. But they can fix her, I said, looking at Via to agree with me. Via wouldn't look up at me. Mum's lips were trembling. I think it might be time we say goodbye to Daisy, Augie. I'm really sorry. No! Look, we don't want her to suffer, Augie. The phone rang and Via picked it up. Okay, thanks, and hung up. The taxi's outside, she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Okay, Augie, open the door for me, sweetie. Mum picked up Daisy really gently, like she was a huge droopy baby. Please no, Mum, I said, putting myself in front of the door between. What about Daddy? Look, he's meeting me at the hospital. He doesn't want Daisy to suffer either, Augie. When you don't want an animal to suffer, what you can do is they give it an injection and put it to sleep forever. In English, we say putting it down or putting it to sleep. He's meeting me at the hospital. He doesn't want Daisy to suffer, Augie. Via moved me away from the door and held it open. Mum's cell phone's on if you need anything. Can you cover her with a blanket? Via nodded, and she was crying hysterically now. Via nodded. She was crying hysterically now. Great word. Say goodbye to Daisy, kids, Mum said, tears streaming down her face. I love you, Daisy, Via said, kissing Daisy on the nose. I love you very, very much. Bye, little girlie, I whispered into Daisy's ear. I love you. Mum carried Daisy down the stoop. The taxi driver had opened the back door and we watched her get in. Just before she closed the door, Mum looked at me, standing in the entrance, both of us together, and she gave us a little wave. I don't think I'd ever seen Mum look so sad. I love you, Mummy, said Via. I love you, Mummy, I said. I'm really sorry, Mummy. Mum blew a kiss to us and closed the door. We watched the car leave and then Via closed the door. She looked at me for a second and then she hugged me very, very tight while we both cried a million tears. So here's my book club question, and try and think really deeply about this answer. What were the tears for? Turn and tell your neighbour your ideas. So you might notice you had different answers. Some people were the tears because the emotions were so much for them. So some people didn't answer one event. There were so many emotions that day that they were letting out the tears as a release. Some people were saying that they were terribly sad because the dog was dying. Some people were saying they were terribly sad because they'd had an argument. And some people were saying they were terribly sad because there was a build-up towards an argument and they felt terrible that they'd been screaming and yelling at each other. And then, to add to it, the dog is probably going to die. Daisy's toys. Justin came over about half an hour later. He gave me a big hug. Sorry, Augie. Justin's moved on from worrying about what Augie looks like. Give him a big hug. We all sat down in the living room, not saying anything, and for some reason Via and I had taken all of Daisy's toys from around the house and put them in a little pile on the coffee table. Now we just stared at that pile. She really was the greatest dog in the world, said Via. I know, said Justin, with his hand on her shoulder. She just started whimpering, and then all of a sudden, I said, like 2 seconds after you left the table, yeah, Mum was going to go after you, but Daisy just started whimpering. Well, like how? Just whimpering. I don't know, said Via. Like howling? Augie, like whimpering, she answered impatiently. And she just started moaning like something was really hurting her. And she was panting like crazy. Then just kind of plopped down. And Mum went over and tried to pick her up and whatever. And she was obviously hurting. She bit Mum. What? When Mum tried to touch her stomach, Daisy bit her. Daisy never bites anyone. Yeah, she wasn't herself, said Justin. She obviously was in a lot of pain. Daddy was right, said Via. We shouldn't have let her get this bad. What do you mean? He knew she was sick. Augie, Mum's taken her to the vet like 3 times in the last 2 months. She's been throwing up all the time. Haven't you noticed? But I didn't know she was sick. Via didn't say anything, but she put her arm around my shoulders and pulled me closer to her, and I started to cry again. I'm sorry, Augie, she said softly. I'm sorry about everything, okay? You forgive me? You know how much I love you. I nodded. Somehow that fight didn't matter much. Was Mummy bleeding, I asked. Yeah, it was just a nip right there. She pointed to the bottom of her thumb to show me exactly where Daisy had bitten her. Did it hurt? Augie, Mummy is okay. So now Augie's worried about Mum as well. I think this might be a turning point for Augie, where he realizes it's not all about him. And he's missed even the fact that Daisy's been sick for 2 months because he's been me all the time, not thinking about the whole family. I think that might be a turning point in the way he thinks about other people. Mum and Dad came home 2 hours later, and we knew the second they opened the door Daisy wasn't with them and that Daisy was gone. We all sat down in the living room around a pile of Daisy's toys. Dad told us what happened at the animal hospital and how the vet took Daisy for some x-rays and blood tests and came back and told them she had a huge growth in her tummy. She was having trouble breathing. Mum and Dad didn't want her to suffer, so Daddy picked her up in his arms, like he always liked to do, and with her legs straight up in the air, and he and Mum kissed her goodbye all over and whispered to her, while the vet put the needle in her leg. And then after about a minute, she died in Daddy's arms. It was so peaceful, Daddy said. She wasn't in any pain at all, like she was just going to sleep. A couple of times while he talked, Daddy's voice got all trembly. He cleared his throat. I've never seen Dad cry before. When you clear your throat, can everyone show that? Clearing your throat. Like that. That's called clearing your throat. I've never seen Dad cry like that before, but I saw him cry tonight. I'd gone into Mum and Dad's bedroom looking for Mum to put me to bed, and I saw Dad sitting on the edge of the bed, taking off his socks. His back was to the door, so I didn't know he didn't know I was there, and at first I thought he was laughing because his shoulders were shaking. But then he put his palms on his eyes, and I realized he was crying. I saw Mum lying next to Via on the bed, and Mum was whispering to Via, who was crying. So I went to my bed and I put on my pajamas without anyone telling me to, put on my nightlight, turned the light off, and crawled into the little mountain of stuffed animals I had left on my bed earlier. I felt like all had happened 1,000,000 years ago. I took my hearing aids off and I put them on the night table, and I pulled the covers over my ears and imagined Daisy snuggling with me, her big wet tongue licking my face all over, like it was her favorite face in the world. And that's how I fell asleep. Book club. How? In a minute you're going to turn and talk, but I'm going to ask you to think about 2 things. How did Augie fall asleep? Usually. How did Augie fall asleep this night? What made Augie not demand his mum or dad come and tuck him in and put him to bed? And how was the author using this to change Augie's attitude and maturity and everything? So they're showing us how he used to go to bed, how he went to bed this night, why did he go to bed himself, look after himself, not demand his parents, and then how is this as an author making you see that Augie's changed and grown up? You might not be able to answer all those questions or remember all those questions, but between you and your group, whoever you're talking to, you might remember some of those. Remember, speak but also listen.